Sarah, would you come and share with us your perspective?
Thank you. I have my tech helper here. Give me just a minute to get my PowerPoint up. Okay. While my wonderful assistant is helping me with PowerPoint, I will start. Okay. Let's see. Do I have to go closer? Yes. Usually being quiet is not my problem. Okay. Okay, I'm so excited to be here. I am on the board here. Okay. Rob Stuckey is our awesome videographer, and I have to stand right here so he can hear me. Okay. Do you want to come do this for me? Thanks. Okay, last fall I was digging through the archives, which is my favorite thing to do, working on another presentation, and I was digging through the Forward Club collection because I thought the Forward Club was so cool and I wanted to figure out what it was. And I came across the fact that the first meeting in this building was May 12th, 1922, and I thought, this is amazing. We have 100 years coming up. We got a plan for this. Awesome, thank you. So I was so excited. We talked about it as a board. We contacted Pastor Jeff. His team was fabulous. He was so excited to have this event. He said, we'll do everything. You show up and talk. And I said, I can do that. Like, I'm good. So thank you so much, Pastor Jeff. He's been not only helpful, just excited about this event. So we're very excited to be here. Introduce me. I am a newcomer to Lemon Grove. I've only lived here for 18 years, which for a lot of you is like yesterday. I know that. So I am a newcomer. I joined the board of the Historical Society in early 2020. It was actually a great pandemic distraction. I loved going over to the Lee House and cleaning up and learning. So I love history. I have a degree in history. And after being up in the Lee House and seeing the beautiful archives, I was inspired to actually return to school. So I just finished my first 2 archive classes. So I'm an aspiring archivist, as my blog is named. So I'm really excited to be here. Let's see. So there we go. Okay, the Lemon Grove Historical Society. I want to give a little bit of background before I jump into the Forward Club. It was started in about 77, and that's, for many of you know, when Lemon Grove was incorporated. A lot of the charter members collected papers, collected remembrances, and we have a lot of those in our archives. Many people don't know we have archives. So the Historical Society maintains 2 historical houses here in Treganza Heritage Park. The one on the left is the first church in Lemon Grove. It's now a beautiful museum. The one on the right is the Lee House, which some of you remember going across the trolley tracks in the early 2000s. It was moved when the 125 came through. Now it is our event space, our cultural space, and our archive. So up in that attic, amazing things live that no one's ever seen because it's not usually open to the public. But you can make an appointment for a small fee, and I will show you around. So the Forward Club collection is one of the many collections we have up there. And I also want to do a little shameless plug. I did bring membership forms. I'm the membership person. So if you want to support preservation and education in Lemon Grove, join the Historical Society. There's forms over there, or talk to me. I'm the membership person. So that's my shameless plug. So as far as the collection, I'm going to be speaking from the documents that we have. We have been donated documents, a lot of them from Dolly Nottingham in '98. I found a donation form. So I don't have more information than our collection. So there's a lot of holes. A lot of you probably know more about the Forward Club than I do because there's holes in our documentation. These are the sources I have pretty much. We have some minute books, we have some compiled histories, we have some scrapbooks, we have fabulous things from the 50s, lots of 50s pictures. I have a scrapbook from the 70s, newspaper clippings. I'm missing pretty much everything after about 1980. So there's a big hole in this history, but I'm going to tell you what I know. And I'm also going to be speaking not individually. These women were amazing. They individually were pioneer women and did amazing things in their community. I'm going to be talking about collective actions and kind of focus on collective contributions and what the club did as a whole. So I just wanted to kind of show you my sources. The Forward Club was started in 1913. Here's a couple pictures. And it went to 98, so it was 85 years. According to the history we have, there were no records before 1917. They were destroyed. I did find that in one of the art history books. So I think the histories from the early club were probably written later, maybe 40s or 50s. It might have been written in '63 when they had their 50th anniversary. But from the written accounts, they started as a literary club. So this is a quote from the history. Late in 1912 or early 1913, about a dozen Lemon Grove women were called together by Mrs. C.H. Shellbach, and a literary and cultural club was organized. After considerable discussion, the name of Forward Club of Lemon Grove was chosen because that expressed our spirit and purpose, which I think is fabulous. I love the name Forward Club. I wish they had kept it. So according to the history I have actually more pictures, but the first few slides, I don't have a lot of pictures from the 19 teens, so there are more pictures later. The slides get less boring, I promise. So there was a club song written by Miss Edith Constable, and it was sung by the Forward Club Quartet. The Reverend, I think he was the Reverend of the Congregational Church. His wife gave much help in the arranging of the program of study. Among the books studied were Bryce's South America, Bayview Magazine, and the study of Mexico. So these women they wanted to learn. They wanted to get together and discuss literature and learn about different, travel and all kinds of different topics. Their first year program included papers on travel, book reviews, current events. Mexico was pretty thoroughly covered. One woman was a doctor, and she gave practical ideas on keeping our health. And we all took notes at each meeting. The last meeting of the year was open to club husbands and well attended. So they met first in Miss Shellbach's house, and then they met in the country club. So I talked to Helen Ofield because she knows a lot more than I do. And I found out that the country club actually met in this same building. So this Congregational Church building on the right is about 1910. That's when it was a church and it had a steeple. After it stopped being a church, according to Helen, it was built in 1897. It stopped being a church in 1912. Another church was built, which has since been torn down. We lost that church. But we know that in 1915, the Lemon Grove Country Club was using this building. It was also the library. I found out that it was like the county library. So the Women's Club did actually rent from the Country Club. And on a side note, we have a minute book from the Lemon Grove Country Club starting in 1906, which is fascinating, and I can't wait to read more. So there is a country club. It was short-lived. It was really early. They were talking about which way the street should go in 1906. So hopefully I can do a presentation on that one day. So the club activities in the early days, 50 cents for active members were the dues. They were held once a month or twice a month. I love how the women answered roll call with current events, or sometimes they would say women's rights. Now remember, this is before my mom got the vote. So this was a very forward-thinking club. They were very interested in women's issues. Perhaps the chief project of the club during those years was tree planting. They have a tree planting entertainment to raise funds, which seemed to be a success. The club joined the County Federation in 1913, State Federation in 1917, and was incorporated in 1921. So I listed kind of what they had done during that year. I think what happened is a historian had gone back through the minute books and kind of made a list of their activities. I'm not going to read all of them, but I think it's interesting that they weren't just getting together and having women talk. They were talking about issues. They were talking about child welfare and Armenian sufferers. What was this? There was things going on in Armenia in the 19 teens. They were talking about government and women's rights and national parks, and they were really interested in planting trees, and they even would replace some of the trees when they died. So they were talking about really interesting and important topics at a really early time in this city. We don't know why, but there were new bylaws in 1917. The records say all records before 1917 were destroyed. It doesn't say why they were destroyed. It says maybe it could have been on purpose, it could have been by accident, but everything before 1917 was destroyed. We just have written histories that look back at that time. This is the best because it's the very first publication we have. So each year, I know a lot of you saw the exhibit in the back, they have annual books. So every year they would publish a book of the programming for that year. And this is the very first one we have from 1916 to 17. And so the years would go on the school year. So they would meet from September to May. So this was 16 to 17 that year. It shows the active members. So there were, I think I counted 34 members, 6 associate members and 2 honorary members. So this is a trifold. It's the oldest publication. This is the other side. So this is the programming for the year, the committees, and the officers, which is pretty great. It's really fun to go back and look at what kind of meetings they had in the 19 teens. Another thing they did is they also had some things happen during World War I thought were really interesting. They contributed to the war effort in every way possible, and particularly by sewing and knitting for the Red Cross and the purchase of Liberty bonds. Also, the club on Arbor Day planted a jacaranda tree in memory of Spencer Bell, he being the one Lemon Grove boy who paid the supreme sacrifice during World War I. And that was beautiful. They planted a tree for Spencer Bell. And they did endorse the League of Nations. So one interesting thing is these women clubs would pass resolutions, and they would kind of say, do we agree with this or not? And they would pass this resolution saying, we agree with this issue or we don't agree with this issue. And they did endorse the League of Nations. So this is a resolution that was pasted in their minute book, and it was a resolution of condolences to the mother of Spencer Bell. In part, it says, to our belief that no more glorious thing can be done than with a life than to freely give it in the defense of liberty. So this is the one who passed away. And I thought it was really interesting that number one, they had resolutions, and number two, on the bottom it says there's a committee of resolutions. So they had a committee of people to write resolutions. So that's interesting. This is also really interesting. In 1919, they actually had kind of an honorary meeting, and they had listed all of the boys who fought in World War I, and they spoke about each one. So this is a picture from that minute book of all the boys who served and what they did, and they had a roll of honor, and each one was spoken about individually. And this was after the war ended, so I thought that was really lovely that they would, talk about local servicemen. And then the next big project is building the clubhouse that we're in. A committee was appointed to look for lots they hoped for clubhouse. Also one for raising funds for the same. Mrs. Eccles stimulated the project with the following quotation: "Bite off more than you can chew and chew it. Plan to do more than you can do and do it. Hitch your wagon to the star and there you are." Which is awesome, and I recently found out that Lemon Grove does not have a mission statement or a motto, so I think we should do this. I think this is pretty great. So they really had to work hard to make money for this clubhouse. This is their main project in 1921. So this is actually back on the back table. This is an agreement to pay for lot 9. I realized recently they actually bought 3 lots, and we have grant deeds for each of the lots that are on the back table. They bought these 3 lots in 1921. This one was for $275. I'm assuming the other ones were similar amounts. This is one of the grant deeds for one of the lots that they purchased. And then this is just the history of building the clubhouse. Mr. Zipwald of Lemon Grove drew the plans. The Southern Trust and Commerce Bank made the loan of $3,500, but the final cost was $5,473. The building was completed for the last meeting of the year, which was one of great rejoicing. The women had worked hard and felt a deep satisfaction over their accomplishment. So that is 100 years ago today, that meeting happened, which is really exciting. So the club, thank you. So the club membership was 80 at the time, and remember, it was their last meeting of the year because it was in May, and all their meetings went from September to May, and then they took the summer off. So it was their last meeting in that year. So this is the oldest picture that I could find. It is a postcard, and that is a posted marked as 1924. So that's a great picture. Also notice there's no parking lot. Also notice there's no address, because apparently the postman knew everybody in Lemon Grove. So that's what happened in 1924. So this is the next interesting thing I found in the minute book. I did look through the minute books a little bit. This is awesome. In 1925, they were worried about traffic accidents. Now, in 1925, I'm pretty sure there were a lot of horse and buggies on the road, and I know there were a lot of cars. It was kind of like the time they had both. So the intersection, this is what the resolution reads. The intersection of Imperial Boulevard and Golden Avenue. Who knows where that is? That's like where the old Union Bank building is and the pet store. Okay. It's a dangerous corner. A number of accidents have already occurred. It is essential to the safety of the traveling public that proper danger and traffic signals should be placed at said intersection. I don't know what they did in 1925 for danger and traffic signals, but apparently they were having, can you imagine like a horse and buggy accident? Like, I don't know what that looks like. Yeah, especially with a car and a horse, I don't know. So they resolved that the Civic Committee should personally interview Charles L. Good, that they also requested that the Board of Supervisors keep the boulevard right-of-way of Lemon Grove free from weeds. So I think this is pretty fabulous. And there is still not a traffic signal there. I mean, like I don't know if it's as dangerous now, but it's not a traffic signal there.
The reason that's important was that Golden Avenue used to cross the tracks and go over to Main Street, and there was no Broadway crossing the tracks.
So it was much more dangerous then.
You might want to read it. I don't know.
So she said that there was no Broadway and Golden crossed the tracks. And so it was much more dangerous to travel on that road, which is interesting. So this is one of the documents I found from the 20s. We had very few documents from the 20s, but it was a club dinner. And remember, they had a mortgage to pay. So they were paying a mortgage. So they had a lot of fundraisers. They were very creative. And this is a club dinner, and it has a menu, and the club dinner is 85 cents. And it's in 1926, which is pretty fabulous. In the 30s, they would rent out their event. This is an event space, and this is the rules they had. This was in their minute book. This is a picture from the minute book, and this was in 1930s. In April of 1930, there was no Sunday dances, no liquor, and they had to be out by 1 o'clock per county regulations. And there was a small deposit had to be paid, and all damage was paid by the renter. I thought that was interesting. I also stumbled across, in my looking in the minute books, they were actually trying to get some money from one of the groups that rented it, didn't pay them, and they were going to send them to collections. That's what the board decided to do, which I thought was pretty funny. Also, in 1931, they voted to donate the use of the clubhouse for election polls, which it sounds like this has been a polling place quite a bit through the years. So that started in 31 at the very latest. So this is also really interesting. I've come across a lot of Forward Club documents in other collections. So this is from our school collection, and it is a graduation service exercises in 1934 in this clubhouse, and that is from our school collection. This is an appraiser's report from 1938, which is really cool to look at. They were appraising the building, and at the very top, it has the question, classify neighborhood with respect to density of dwellings, and it says sparsely. So in 1938, this was sparsely dense. It was not dense. I guess it was sparse. And in the 40s, they paid off the mortgage. So in 1944, the Christmas party, they burned the mortgage. It's pretty awesome. So they paid their mortgage for 23 years or whatever, and they're 22 years, and they paid it off. During World War II, they did also support the war effort. They used the house for defense meetings and Red Cross work, purchased war bonds of $250, and its members contributed individually to the war effort in countless ways. And that was written by a club historian, and we have that typed up. It's also in the back. So the women's club had other sections. The juniors club started in 1945. And I think juniors club, like teenagers, but the juniors club was really like younger women. The pictures make it look like maybe women below 40 were in the junior section. The juniors club was very prolific. We have lots of scrapbooks, and they did we have a lot of newspaper articles from what they did. This is from the history. They started in 1945. They did all kinds of amazing community work. I'm going to, for time's sake, so you guys are here forever, I will skip ahead. So this is from actually a different collection, also from our Chamber of Commerce collection. In the 50s, we were very booming and a really fast-growing city. And they published a brochure saying how amazing Lemon Grove was. And the Forward Club actually was in the brochure. So if you look down at the bottom, that picture is the Forward Club, and I blew it up on the right. And the part of how great Lemon Grove was the fact that the ladies of Lemon Grove built their own clubhouse. The cool thing is I found this picture in our collection, and it was not dated. And then when I was putting this together, I realized I think it's probably from 47, because I think that picture is probably the same, which is pretty great. So I have very, very few pictures of the outside, or actually of the inside. I don't have a lot of pictures of the building, but this one is a pretty great one. Look at the trees around. There's still a lot of garden. So in the 40s, the Forward Club had different sections. They had a garden section, book reviews, and drama department. And the juniors had an arts and crafts department. In 1947, the garden section won second place in a competition with other clubs. My assistant's going to come help me with an audio piece right now. In 1948, so there actually is quite a history of the Women's Club giving scholarships, and I have several different instances. In 48, they gave scholarships to Grossmont High School and San Diego State College. Now this is really exciting. So this, in 1951, this is the oldest piece of audio we have in our history, in our oral history collection. We have an audio piece from a radio interview from 1951. So this picture I found in the newspaper, and this is when Mrs. Irving Vernier is becoming the president. I think they probably did like officer installations in May, the very last meeting of the year. I'm not positive, but I think they did. So this picture probably was in May, and the next January, she is interviewed on the radio. So Saturday mornings, the County Federation of Clubs would interview a club president. And so she was interviewed, and it was a 13-minute interview, and we have the whole audio piece. I edited it so it skips around a little bit, but we're going to play 3 minutes of this. And it's really great because she talks about the clubhouse, and she talks about the membership in 1951. So are you ready?
I need to cut off your mic.
Yes, got off my mic. The Bluetooth doesn't work. Oh, okay.
Today's guest is the president of the Forward Club of Lemon Grove, Mrs. H. Irving Vernier, who will tell us of her club's interests and activities in Lemon Grove.
Lemon Grove is a suburb of San Diego. It's a very old community, and at one time was really a lemon grove. But in the past few years, we've grown so rapidly that instead of being a small village, we are now a very busy town of more than 12,000 people. In fact, Lemon Grove for many months has been the fastest growing community in Southern California. It was started in a very simple way many years ago in 1913. Our founder, Mrs. C.H. Shellbach, invited a few women into her home for the afternoon, and that group was the nucleus of Forward Club. These women later incorporated and had as their object to promote the intellectual, artistic, economic, and moral interests of the community. They named the club Forward Club to denote the progress they hoped constantly to make.
How large now is your Forward Club in Lemon Grove?
We have a membership of approximately 150. We're very anxious to reach the new women who have come into our rapidly growing community. Most of them have no doubt belonged to clubs in the towns from which they came, and will feel much more at home here if they are identified with the women's club of this community, and we would love to have them.
Does the Forward Club have its own clubhouse?
Oh, yes, we have a very large, comfortable clubhouse that's completely paid for, but many women worked hard and for many years to accomplish that. Our building is of redwood construction, and we have a very large auditorium with a stage at one end, and along one wall there is a large fireplace. On the east side of the building, there's a wide porch the entire length of the building, with French doors opening onto it from the auditorium. From this porch, we have a magnificent view of the mountains, and we overlook much of the town.
A very sightly location and a spacious, friendly clubhouse. I hear that Miss Sessions planned your club grounds.
We're very proud of the fact that Miss Kate Sessions, the famous horticulturalist who had so much to do with establishing Balboa Park, also planned our club grounds. Miss Sessions laid out a winding, shady path with low-growing Indian hawthorn on each side. This path leads from our front porch down to the street below. We have some rare trees. We have 2 specimens of the bottlebrush family that one seldom sees elsewhere. We have the red-flowering eucalyptus and the pink eucalyptus. We have something else distinctive and rare. A next-door neighbor to the clubhouse who asked permission to keep our grounds watered just for the pleasure it gives him. How many people can boast such a grand neighbor? He is Mr. Fred Oceanbruns, and I know he gets as much pleasure from this goodwill gesture as we get when we walk over our grounds that have responded so beautifully to his generous care.
I hope you could all hear that. Is my mic back? Are we live yet? Is my mic back? Are we good? I love that audio piece. It goes on, in my next slide, it goes on to talk about the different sections of the club. It's a 13-minute piece. They have square dancing 2 times a month in the building. They have club projects. They talk about club projects that paid for the clubhouse. And for reference, the population of Lemon Grove is now about 26,000. So it hasn't really grown that much since 51, just doubled, but so that piece of audio I think was great. And that's how we found out that Kay Session designs the ground. So it's now a parking lot, but imagine she described the beautiful garden that was around the grounds, which is pretty amazing. So in 1951, they changed their name to the Lemon Grove Women's Club. And I don't know why they did it. I did just barely find a newspaper article yesterday that said they changed their name. And the article basically said they just voted to change it. So I don't know if it's just because it was easier to say Women's Club. But I love the name Forward Club, so I'm a little bit sad they changed it. But in 1951, they would go by the Lemon Grove Women's Club. And this is the Vogue section. I love the fact they named themselves the Vogue section. So the women's club meetings were in the afternoons, but some women could not attend in the afternoon, so they had an evening section. They called themselves the Vogue section, which is awesome, and they look very fashionable. That's in 1955. If you look in the back, actually I think the annual from 1955 is open, and it says what Vogue stands for. So go back and read. It says what Vogue stands for, and it has every letter of Vogue that means something. So go back and look at that. I just found that recently. So we have a scrapbook. We have some really great scrapbooks from the Vogue section. So this is their programming for 1 year. And this is a letter thanking them for helping them with a school bond, passing a school bond. So they were doing really great community work. This is great because look at this, the stage we are on. Look at that picture from 1955. It must have been a luau. I love any picture I could find of inside, I tried to include. This is the women's club, kind of making fun of themselves a little bit. They did a humorous play, and the play was called The Meeting of the Board, and it was an original skit about a play on items of business and the happenings of a board meeting. So they had this, and we actually in our archives have, I think, the original script for this one-act play, and they put it on to a group of seniors to entertain them. So they did a lot of entertainment and funny things too, and there's some really great follies too. We have some great pictures of some follies on this stage. So I thought this was awesome. In 1956, they had a guest speaker come, and what was the topic? The nation's #1 problem, mental health. I mean, that could be today. I mean, how that thing's not even changed, right? I thought that was so amazing. They were talking about mental health in the 56, and we think, oh, no one's been speaking about mental health. The women were talking about it in 1956. So in the 50s, of course, the Korean War happened. They were involved in the community and in issues of world issues, and so they sponsored a Korean orphan. So it must have been through an orphanage. They adopted an orphan, and the article says that they sponsored a Korean orphan living in an orphanage, a child whose parents were lost in the Korean War, and they'll provide care and training for the next year. There's a couple of letters we have with translations. We actually have a darling picture that this little child wrote. But then we have an article that the parents were, like the family members were found of their orphan, and so they sponsored the next orphan. And this article was hilarious because it says, members of the club will continue to support the new inmate who has also lost her parents as a result of the invasion. It's interesting they'd use the word inmate for an orphanage, but according to the letters, it looks like they were getting excellent care. So they were involved in the community, and they sponsored a Korean orphanage, which is amazing. This is a picture of them serving in 1956, and this is a YMCA Armed Services. And you can see the sign. I think they probably had clubs take turns, and it's the Lemon Grove Women's Club turn to serve probably tea and cake to the men in the armed services. This is another scholarship, and this picture was taken in the clubhouse. You can't really see it, but the article says it was taken in the clubhouse. And this is for Helix and Grossmont students in 57. This is the junior scrapbook. I have several pictures from the junior scrapbook. The juniors were really good at scrapbooking. And there were a lot of conventions. They went to state conventions and national conventions. And this is a picture from the San Francisco Convention State Awards Banquet, and their very own Patty Castle won an award, the first place music. And there's a little arrow. Someone drew an arrow on the actual picture, and that's in the scrapbook. So I really want to wear those ladies' dresses. The 50s pictures are all beautiful. This is the installation of club officers in April of 56, and this is also the junior section. This is probably my favorite slide in the entire show. So the County Federation had some kind of traffic thing going on, and they were trying to stop jaywalkers. So they made up these little citations, and this ran in the paper. This actually picture ran in the newspaper. And so the juniors gave away jaywalking tickets, and it's a courtesy citation. So the courtesy citations give jaywalkers a macabre choice. They may elect to have their remains, if they are crippled or killed because of jaywalking, sent to any one of the 9 hospitals in the county or the county morgue. So the women's club were giving these little, and that is an actual picture of a citation, and they were giving to people jaywalking, so they wouldn't jaywalk and they wouldn't be killed by, there were cars by the 50s, at least it wasn't horse and buggies. But the picture is fabulous. That's my favorite picture in the whole thing. And this is also members of the Women's Traffic Safety Division. And so these are among the club members trying to get people not hit by cars. So and there were all kinds of committees they were involved in. This is probably my favorite article. So what happened is, I think this is probably a column about clubs in the area. And this is in the San Diego Union Tribune in 1957. And what happened is the author just got a letter from, it's Mrs. Bert A. Betts. And so Mrs. Bert A. Betts, who was the president of the junior section, wrote a letter about what they were doing. And the author starts the article in the best way. She says, if you are one of those who thinks club work is all pink teas and talk, Mrs. Bert A. Betts can open your eyes. And so then she goes on to print much of the letter, and they are doing amazing work. They are getting the polio vaccinations ready. They have actually 2 people going to the Children's Hospital every day to prep polio vaccinations. They are getting a Follies show ready to entertain seniors. They have puppet show going. They're doing bake sale for Hungarian Relief. And so this letter just goes on to show all the things that juniors, and this is just the junior section of the Women's Club, all the great work they're doing. And so it's pretty great. This is pictures of the women in preparing the polio vaccination. So how amazing, we're having vaccinations, in 2020, but they were doing the first big vaccination campaign, and they were really involved. Apparently they were the only club that was volunteering. They're going every day to wrap needles. Back then, you couldn't just throw them away. I think they probably had to clean them and wrap them and get them all ready for polio vaccinations. And they sponsored a polio vaccination clinic in Lemon Grove. This is part of the Follies show, Can Dancers, probably on this stage. I'm pretty sure that's pictures on this stage. There were a lot of other pictures, but this was by far the best. I think this one actually got in the newspaper too. So this is also from the Juniors Club. And I love this because they basically would fundraise, and then they got to $90 and they spent it on a projector to give to the Lemon Grove School Remedial Reading class. My favorite part of this is the fact that they had a Build a Better Community Committee. So this was the work of the committee, and the committee was named Build a Better Community Committee, which is fabulous. So they were helping Lemon Grove schools too. So this is the next junior scrapbook, and this is the next few slides from 58 to 59. Now I pulled these pictures because they were of this stage, and you can see the awesome things the women did on this stage. And this is in 58 and 59. And then in 58, they joined the Citizens Committee for the Prevention of Juvenile Delinquency of San Diego County, and they paid dues. So this shows that they are paid for the year to prevent juvenile delinquency. So same worries, I guess, we have today of juvenile delinquents. This is great because this shows an annual convention they went to at the Hotel Del. So that is pictures of the annual convention in 58, and look at those pictures on the right, and that's in the front of the Del. It hasn't changed that much. They have some great pictures of the Hotel Del, and look at this. This is inside the ballroom, and they were a choral group that sang inside the Hotel Del. I'm pretty sure it looks the same now, and this is in 58. This is another Build a Better Community Committee project. They decorated the children's section of the Lemon Grove Library, and they did the bulletin boards, and they had planned on continuing to do that. And this is, we're at 63. This is the 50th anniversary of the Women's Club. And this is an article from the Union Tribune in 1963. The best part about this is on the right, that is the founder. She's 88, and that's Mrs. Shellbach. 50 years after it started, she's still around, which is awesome. And she comes, I guess she moved to Chula Vista, but she comes and she is honored. And these are other people that are presidents in the club, both president and a member pictured. And then this same time, they're having their 50th anniversary. They have an article about the 3 oldest members, and here they're listed. The one on the very, very right, I thought it was interesting. She was president in 1929, 37, and 37. So they had been presidents before, and they were still in the Women's Club in 63. So she had been in the Women's Club for probably most of her life. This is another picture of different past presidents holding the gavel. I guess they had a gavel to conduct business. And so the one on the right is Mrs. H. Irving Vernier, and she's the one you heard her voice. And the one on the left is Miss Shellbach, and she's the founder. So I really wanted to show those pictures. So in 1964, the next year, I did find some documentation that said the club members, they had 127 members and 27 juniors. So they still have about 150 in 64. And then the next documentation I have is a scrapbook from the 70s. This is the president in 1971. And the scrapbook in the 70s is, number one, falling apart because don't ever use construction paper in your scrapbooks, people. But it also kind of jumps around. It goes all the way to about 80. So this is some pictures also of serving at the Armed Forces YMCA. And it wasn't dated, but it was probably early 70s. Doing the same thing, cake and cookies and tea for the armed services. And then they were back to planting trees in the 70s. They circled back to where they began. They contribute money to planting trees, and there's a couple of certificates about their work planting trees. This is scholarships again to Mount Luca High School and Helix High, and these are letters from the school thanking them, and this is probably in the clubhouse. I love her hair, giving the students scholarships. So this is from also the 70s scrapbook. This is another Confederation convention they went to, and I love the picture on the top left says Lemon Grove Vogues. So they went by Vogues. They still had a Vogue section in 72. Now this is also from the 70s. So this is pasted in the scrapbook. I think this is actually open in the back, the page I opened to. I love how they listed all the things they gave money to, and they listed, and I have them typed up, but you can read them later. They gave money to the Balboa Park membership. They gave money to the Chamber of Commerce. I love this revolving shoe fund for local schools. They give $100. They had a revolving shoe fund. That's amazing. They gave money to all kinds of different things. The Zoological Society, tree planting in the Wild Animal Park, $50 in the 70s. They gave money here and there. And then the very bottom of this page, they said, can you add any charities to this list that help the needy, encourage youth, or beautify the community? So that's what they used to use their money. So I thought that was great. You can think of those 3 things when you're spending your charitable dollars. So the next thing that happens is they sell to the Baptist Church, this building. According to what Pastor Jeff has told me, Apparently, the fire department wanted sprinklers in here, and there were some problems, and the Women's Club did not have the money for that. That's what passed, according to Pastor Jeff. So they came up with a deal that they would sell the clubhouse to the First Baptist Church of Lemon Grove. They're a nice neighbor over here. And there is some actually documentation in the back that shows some correspondence of the agreement. So what I found out is they sold it for $10,000 less, but they had a 25-year no-cost lease to use the building. So in the agreement, it lists actually all the meeting times, and actually here, I think that's the next slide. So this is some of the correspondence having to do with the agreement, and that is it's kind of cool because in 73 we have a documentation of all the meetings they still had in 73, and there were a lot of them. They still had a lot of members. So I think from what I can tell, it was appraised at about $35,000. They sold it for $25,000, and at the no-cost lease for 25 years. And this is amazing. This is also the Juniors Club, and they made a Lemon Grove community guide. And I just found this in a box. It was just in there. And I love the art, but they had the school district printed it, and they just put together any community resource they could find. There's all kinds of stuff in this book of all the community resources, and they put that together for the community. So that's pretty much where my documentation ends. Probably a lot of you know what happened in the 80s and 90s. I have no documentation. It has not been donated to us yet. So our collection ends at about 1980. We don't have much after that. I know they kept continuing to meet here. I know they did good work, but I don't have any documentation, except I do have the very last invitation to the very last meeting, which is beautiful. They say, please join us in the afternoon of friendship as we celebrate the end of 85 years of service to our community. So one thing that's interesting is that they did have a 25-year lease, and that is 25 years after 1973. So I don't imagine they ended because their lease ended, but it's interesting that 25 years after they sold the building, they did actually stop meeting. I've heard it's just because they got older and smaller, and they just didn't have enough people to continue to have a club. But the last document I have is from the California Federation of Women's Clubs, and it's a 85th anniversary scroll, which is pretty great. So that's all the documentation I have. I have a few things to say about the back exhibit. So in the exhibit, you can look along the front, and there's annual books for a lot of the years. And in those annual books, they would have programming and members, and we can really learn a lot about Lemon Grove from those annual books. Also, the scrapbooks they put together are amazing. And some of those scrapbooks have, like this one, the purple one, it's open to another page in the back, but it hand-painted flowers. They've hand-painted these flowers on these scrapbooks, which are made of construction papers. Every time you turn the page, they crack and break. But the scrapbooks are beautiful. So just take a peek back there. There's all kinds of interesting stuff. Just don't touch anything. The archivist, the preservationist in me wants you not to touch anything, but look at it. Because archives are made to be used but not touched. Okay. I just wanted to kind of give a few thoughts. I've spent a lot of time reading and scanning these documents, and I spent a lot of time just studying Lemon Grove history. And I feel like I'm a newcomer. I've lived here 18 years. But as I dive into the history, I think just like we learn about our family history, we really feel a sense of who we are. When we study Lemon Grove history, we have a sense of place. We have a sense of home. I feel so much more at home now because I know more history than I ever have. I really feel like I belong here just because I know the history, which is really interesting. I've also reflected a lot about sometimes we think things change, but maybe not so much. They were talking about mental health back then. They were talking about juvenile delinquency. They were talking about planting trees. I mean, there's a lot of things that we still worry about now. Things have not changed as much as we think. I've also thought a lot about there is still people in Lemon Grove. There's lots of groups in Lemon Grove. They're doing the same work they were doing. There's many groups that do the exact same things. And I feel like we're really carrying on the Women's Club legacy. We have the Lions Club, we have Seroptimus, Thrive Lemon Grove, the Community Garden, the Clergy Association, Friends of the Library, we have church groups, the list goes on. We are still here, we are still building Lemon Grove, we are still doing exactly what these women did. We are improving Lemon Grove just like they did, one project and one fundraiser at a time. I really feel a kinship with these women because I feel like we're all trying to do this. We're trying to build Lemon Grove. And I really hope we all can ourselves be on the Build a Better Community Committee. I hope we all think we're on that committee and we're building a better Lemon Grove. So thank you.